Hey everybody, I'm Mad. I read weird stuff and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about as many books under 250 pages as I can think of because it's almost the end of the year. We're trying to hit our reading goals and shorter books are just easier to squeeze in. I'm gonna break this up by genre and let's start with sci-fi. First up is the Murderbot series by Martha Wells. The first 4 books are all under 200 pages each, so you could really squeeze in a good chunk of this series before the end of the year. This is about Murderbot and they are a security robot, but they don't really like their job and they have hacked their system so that they can do whatever they want. But in order to stay under the radar, they continue doing their job, but they also watch so much garbage TV. It's basically like soap operas and it's so funny. They're so unintentionally funny. Their thought process is just like very dry humor and exasperated pretty much all of the time. And they claim to not care about anything or anyone. They find this human and then their family and obviously care very deeply. This series is so charming and so cozy for how much fighting happens in it. The next few books are by Becky Chambers. She's the queen of cozy sci-fi, and I have a couple recommendations by her. The first book is To Be Taught If Fortunate, and it is about a space crew that goes into a long-term space, and they are watching these videos back from home of the past because they were in like a cryo state, and they are catching up. And it is very tragic and it's about the human experience. It's so good. I don't know how she makes me feel so much in such a short amount of time. The next books are a novella series. There's only 2 out right now, but I believe that she's going to be publishing more, and it's the Monk and Robot series. This is about sibling Dex. They are a tea merchant and they just aren't finding fulfillment with their job anymore, so they go off into the wild and they find a robot. Robots gained self-awareness in this world and left to go back to the wild, and they find one and go on this journey of self-discovery together. It is so cute, so charming, and again, it's all about the human experience and it just makes you feel things but in a very cozy way. Next is Full Speed to a Crash Landing by Beth Revis. I believe the second book in the series is also out. It's about Ada. We don't totally know why she's there in the beginning of the book, what she's doing there, but she has to get rescued by this space crew, and despite it being from her point of view, we are learning with the crew what she's up to. It is very fun, fast-paced. It's like an action, adventure, romance type of series, and I think that it's just a lot of fun. A book that's on the heavier side is Annibot by Sierra Greer. This is about an AI companion robot, Annibot, and she lives with this human Doug. Their relationship is bad. Doug is not a good person, but she's also slowly gaining sentience and a more human thought process. We're seeing through her eyes fight through what she's programmed to do. It definitely look up trigger warnings for this one. It's very tragic, but I enjoyed it a lot. I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman, and this is about a young girl who grows up in this bunker with 39 other women. They can't quite remember why they're there, where they came from, but one day the guards that have been guarding them since she can remember, she was essentially born in this bunker, disappear. They leave and these women escape and go across this world. They know that it's not what they remember living in before the bunker, but it's not totally foreign to them either, and they are just trying to survive together through freedom, and we see this girl gain her freedom through knowledge. It is, again, another tragic story. I read it on a plane and I cried. It's not a good book for a plane, but it's a great book for the end of the year because it's right around 160 pages. This is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Motar and Max Gladstone. This is about 2 rival agents across time and space fighting this war, and each author wrote from the perspective of one agent. They're red and blue. That's their names in this story. It's very confusing and doesn't make sense 100% of the time, but what does come across very clearly in this book is this intense sapphic yearning. That was my favorite part of the book. I thought it was also interesting how they chose to leave messages to each other. It's very confusing, but in the best way possible. This is one of my favorite books of the year, and I wish everybody would read it. Okay, let's move on to horror. I have a lot for horror as well. The first being Night of Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. This is middle of the road Stephen Graham Jones for me. I did really enjoy it. I was really frustrated by the ending, but you're supposed to be. It is about a group of high school kids who have found this mannequin and he's just kind of a part of their lives. And then one day he comes alive and starts ticking them off one by one. And Sawyer takes it upon himself to be the hero. And in order to stop the mannequin, he starts killing people first so the mannequin can't get to them. Next is Elevation by Stephen King. This is actually a short story collection, but the whole collection, I think, of 3 stories is under 200 pages. And the title story is about a man who starts losing weight every day, but his body doesn't change. He looks the same, but he doesn't know what's going to happen when it goes down to 0. It's a surprisingly emotional tale from King because I feel like he doesn't usually write that way. Next is The Horror, and I think the best way to describe this is cozy romantic horror. I love this book. It's one of my favorite of the year. It's about an older woman who is in the process of losing her home to a big development complex, and one night she finds the Har, which is a monster. It's the guy on the cover, and he kind of becomes this companion for her, and it's about her coming back to herself and what it means to remember the people that you love and keep them alive in that way. And I just think there's really nothing else like it. I was so surprised by it, and I honestly can't wait to reread this one. I don't usually reread horror, so this one is really special to me. This is Thrum, and I think this one is also incredibly unique. This is about a woman. She is not quite remembering how her space crew crashed the way it did, and she onboards onto this alien's spaceship, and he's very confusing. She can't see him the way that she's supposed to. She doesn't sensorially process the way that she is supposed to on his ship, and she becomes an unreliable narrator both to herself and to us. It is sci-fi, it is horror, it is romance, it's all of those blended together in a way that I haven't ever really experienced. I have 2 T. Kingfishers to recommend you, the first being A House with Good Bones. This one is also more on the cozy side, and it's about a young woman who goes back to her childhood home. Her grandma has died, and they're kind of trying to fix up this house. And things start happening, and they realize that they're not alone in this house. It's very funny. I really enjoyed the way that T. Kingfisher writes. And the next book is What Moves the Dead. This is a retelling of The House of Usher, which I have never read, but this is genuinely a creepy, terrifying, tense book from T. Kingfisher, which I haven't read everything by her yet, but it's not the vibe that I usually get from her. I thought that this was super well done, and I really enjoyed it. Next is another one of my favorites, Goddess of Filth by V. Castro. This is about a group of young women between high school and the rest of their lives, basically that summer. And they mess around with this Ouija board, and then one of them becomes possessed by the Goddess of Filth. But you are probably going to be on the goddess's side. If you enjoyed Jennifer's Body or The Craft, you would absolutely adore this. I think it's excellent. Follow Me to Ground. I think that this is such a fever dream, and I don't always enjoy a fever dream story, but I really loved this one. It's about a young woman who is helping her dad heal the townspeople, but they live on the outskirts. They are definitely odd, and in order to heal these people, they bury them, and then the people are fixed and they are unburied. And also about her falling in love with what she thinks is just a normal guy from this village, but it's a bit forbidden by her father, and he's also not quite right. I was shocked by the twist in this story, and I don't see a whole lot of people talking about it. Ring Shot by P. Djeli Clark. I love P. Djeli Clark. I thought that this was genuinely terrifying. This is about the KKK in the early 1910s and a group of young black women trying to survive, but the KKK morph. They are subhuman. They become these true monsters, and I thought this was generally terrifying and gory. This isn't quite horror, but this is the only thriller I have to recommend to you. Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. This is my favorite by Gillian Flynn. It is about a woman who has to go back to her hometown, and she's a journalist, so she has to go and investigate for her newspaper about murders that are happening in this town. Her mother is awful, and her little sister is very weird. There's a large age gap between them as well. I'm not usually a thriller girl, but I love this. This was so good, so weird. Alright, for fantasy I only have a few. Fantasy is typically longer, so they are harder to squeeze in at the end of the year, but I have a few that I really enjoyed. I have another by T. Kingfisher. This one is Thornhedge. This is kind of a dark retelling of Sleeping Beauty, but Sleeping Beauty is the monster. I thought that this was so fun, such an interesting take, and I really enjoyed the characters. I have Princess Florinda and the 40 Flight Tower. If you, like everyone else like me, are waiting for the next book in the Locked Tomb series, this is a nice little palate cleanser, something to tide you over. This is about Princess Florinda, and she goes up in this tower, is locked up in this tower by this witch, and waits for a prince to come and rescue her. They have to fight something on each of the 40 towers, but nobody can make it past the dragon that's outside. So instead of waiting for a man to save her next season, she decides to fight her way down so she can get out. There is also a fairy that comes and just like bothers her. They're kind of frenemies, and I love that character. They are so fun. Next is When Among Crows by Veronica Roth. This is essentially the story of a monster hunter and a monster who have to work together to fight a larger evil. It's set in underground Chicago, and I really enjoyed it. I would totally read a full-length novel in this world. I thought it was really good. I really wanted more though. Next we have Dead Cattail Assassins by P. Djeli Clark. Now I haven't read this one yet, but I love P. Djeli Clark so much I feel comfortable recommending it. It is about an assassin who dies and then is resurrected to, I think, be an assassin again. If I died doing my job and then got resurrected to continue doing my job, I think I'd unresurrect myself. And 2 contemporary books. One you've probably heard of is The Perks of Being a Wallflower. It's under 250 pages, and it's a banned book, so I definitely think it's a good one to check out if you haven't already, or maybe it's time for a reread. And then Luster by Raven Leilani. This story is so messy. It's about a young black woman who is down on her luck in pretty much every aspect of life that you can think of, and then she starts a relationship with this married man who isn't an open relationship, but due to these wacky circumstances, she has to go to his home, which she is usually forbidden to do, and meets his wife, and his wife is not happy for her to be there, and also she discovers that this white couple whom she is in the relationship with the man has an adoptive black daughter, and it's just a mess for like 250 pages, but I really loved it. I'm not usually a contemporary fiction reader, but I really loved this one. Let me know what book you're trying to squeeze in for the end of the year.